Well, it was a day of terror at a Barrow County high school. A mass shooting, the GBI says, was carried out by a young student, leaving 4 people dead.
That includes 2 teachers and 2 students. And at this hour, we are still learning more about this tragic sequence of events. Here's what we know so far. The first calls coming in around 9:30 this morning to Apalachee High School, just outside of the city of Winder. Late today, the GBI confirming that 4 people were killed. Again, 2 teachers, 2 students, and at least 9 others were injured and taken to several hospitals across North Georgia. We do know that the suspect has been identified as 14-year-old Colt Gray. He is alive and was taken into custody. Take a listen to the latest news conference with the latest information from the GBI.
At approximately 10:20 a.m. this morning, the Barrow County Sheriff's Office received alerts about reports of an active shooter and radio traffic from school resource officers concerning the same concern, or having the same concern. Within minutes, law enforcement was on scene, as well as 2 school resource officers assigned here to the school who immediately encountered the subject within just minutes of this report going out. Once they encountered the subject immediately surrendered to these officers and he was taken into custody. Additionally, what I want you to know as of now, there are 4 individuals who are deceased from this incident. 9 that have been taken to local hospitals with various injuries. Of those that are deceased, 2 are students and 2 are teachers here at the school. The priority right now for us within this investigation is to gather all the facts, to make sure that we're accurate with it, because this is a murder investigation. As the sheriff mentioned earlier this morning, the shooter is in custody. His name is Colt, that's C-O-L-T, Gray. He is a 14-year-old student here at the school, G-R-A-Y. He is a 14-year-old student here at the high school. Again, he has been taken into custody. He will be charged with murder and he will be tried as an adult and handled as an adult. We're coordinating these charges and obviously this investigation with District Attorney Brad Smith, who is the District Attorney for the Piedmont Judicial Circuit here. Since earlier this morning we talked with you and since the incident occurred, numerous interviews have been taking place through our investigation with students, faculty, as well as any other witnesses that we could identify. Law enforcement had a very, very swift response to this incident once the incident was determined that there was a concern here. Those resources, whether it was in that response or throughout this investigation to assist, came obviously from the sheriff's office here, from other local law enforcement agencies, state law enforcement agencies, and federal law enforcement agencies as well. To include, not to be left out, multiple EMS personnel, multiple fire personnel, and agencies. Those agencies responded here as well today, and I am extremely grateful, as I know the sheriff is, for that quick response and the partnerships of working here together with what all has gone on. Currently, from the investigative perspective, we have crime scene agents and other special agents from the GBI, from close to a dozen of our different work units from across the state that have responded here today to work on this investigation, again, collecting evidence, conducting interviews, and so forth. I do want to pass this along, that if anyone has any information that wants to be passed on concerning this investigation, that they can do that anonymously at our tip line at 1-800-597-TIPS or 1-800-597-8477. They can also report this on by downloading the See Something, Send Something app. That can be done by Android or Apple phones, either one. If they need to report any tips concerning this investigation. Let me close out before I turn this over to the sheriff and let you, just remind you that this is still a very active investigation. There is still a lot that is very, very fluid, conducted, that will continue on into the night, as well as crime scene work and collecting and gathering evidence. But what is more important for me to mention here to you is my heartfelt sympathy to the parents, the students that were here today. Regardless of where they were in the school, this has got a great impact on them as well as on this community. My thoughts and prayers, along with everybody standing behind me and every law enforcement agency in this state, and many I will tell you around this country, they are in our thoughts and prayers.
Well, you have been listening to a news conference from earlier this afternoon around 4:30. Information from the Georgia Bureau of Investigation regarding today's shooting at Apalachee High School in Barrow County. We are expecting to hear from the GBI once again at some point this evening. We haven't been told exactly what time that might take place, but we'll, of course, bring that to you as soon as it happens. We have a crew still on the ground there at this hour.
Right now, we want to go out live to our Molly Oakes, who has been outside the high school really for the last few hours. Molly, you've been talking to so many students and parents, and I'm really hearing firsthand what they went through today.
Yeah, you know, we've been talking about the dozens and dozens of law enforcement agencies that have been out here from counties spanning across the state, which echoes the GBI's sentiment of saying that this is not just a local investigation, but this is a state and federal level investigation now. But the only thing that matched the amount of law enforcement out here were the parents and the loved ones just trying to get to their students.
I heard gunshots, and then my teacher told us to get in the corner. I heard like screaming and police officers like get down.
My daughter called me at work screaming that there was a shooter at Apalachee. He was with the principal, and the principal told him, run to the band room, don't look back, just keep running.
I know my teacher, I know he got shot. I know one of my friends' got shot in the leg. It was, I don't know everyone, but I know some people that were shot.
I can only imagine, because they do drills for these type of things. You know, they do the preventative measures for these type of things. So to actually be in it here now is just so surreal.
I felt scared because that's when I actually realized it's real, that it's actually happening here. I never thought it would happen in the school.
Really crazy, you just never know what's gonna happen.
What was going through your head when all that happened?
I thought I was gonna die, and I was gonna go to the bathroom right before it happened, and I'm so glad I didn't, because I would probably be dead right now if I did.
I feel really sorry for the kids that they've had to experience this, and the parents who got those phone calls that it was their child, just to start praying for all the kids.
Yeah, we talk about how the community has really wrapped their arms around each other today. Now, not only have we heard from thoughts and prayers from parents and loved ones out here, seeing those hugs behind camera when I was talking with people, just hearing that their kids were okay, but we were also seeing folks after they came and finally got their students coming back, bringing water bottles to law enforcement, water bottles to media crews. Even when I was on camera just now, the Salvation Army's now out here and handed us 2 water bottles. So this is a very tight-knit community that is really hurting, but working to heal with each other's help right now. That healing is also coming from the district level as well. Barrow County School District says schools will be closed this week, but they will have grief counselors at the central office tomorrow from 8 a.m. to 4 p.m. Guys.
All right, Molly Oak live for us, and we will no doubt see more of that community support in about 20 minutes when the community is gathering for a vigil there in the city of Winder.
That is certainly true. We do want to share some new sound with you tonight from a junior at the school who says that they were seated next to the alleged shooter not long before this all took place.
I just remember, like, the moment that it happened, he was at the door, and I knew they were looking for him already, but he was at the door, and they almost let him in until they backed up, and then he turned away, and that's when you hear, like, the first rounds of fire.
So he was in class with you, in algebra class, he left. Then he came back, was at the door, and then knocking to be let back in. Why? You told me something about the doors.
Yeah, they lock automatically, so you have to be let in to come back into our classroom. So I think he wanted to come to us first.
Come to you first to shoot?
Yes, to shoot us class.
And then he was at the door, student went to open the door, and then what happened?
She backed away. I think she saw him, or maybe somebody said something, but I'm pretty sure she saw that he had a gun, and so she backed away.
So she was about to let him into the class, you think, to shoot the students, saw that he had a gun, did not let him in. What happened next?
He turns to the classroom to what would have been my right, and he just starts to shoot, and you hear like about 10 to 15 rounds back to back.
What did you hear? What did you think was going on in those moments?
As soon as they didn't let him in, you kind of like, I don't know, I already kind of had a feeling it was gonna happen and it was him, but as soon as they didn't let him in and you hear the gunshots, you kind of like know.
You knew that something very bad was happening next door. Did he ever say anything?
No, he never really talked. He was pretty quiet. He wasn't there most times. Either he just didn't come to school or he just would skip class. But even when he would have talked, it was one-word answers or just short statements.
You told me off camera you weren't surprised that he would be the shooter. Why is that?
Just because when you think of like shooters and how they act or things that they do, it's usually the quiet kid, or like that's a stereotype for it to be, and he was the one that fit that description in our class.
Did you ever see the gun, or did the student that go to the door see the gun, describe it to you guys?
No, I haven't talked with her after this. It was all pretty hectic, but I didn't see the gun. Like when we heard it, most people just dropped to the floor and like kind of crawled in an area, like piled on top of each other, lost a shoe when they were, trying to get to a corner. The teacher turned off the lights, but we all just kind of piled together, and like I pushed desks in front of us. I was just telling people like, oh, push desks in front of you, block in front of you, get low, things like that.
What would you say to this student that you were just elbow to elbow with just this morning in algebra class, and now this?
I'm not sure. I want to know why he did it. I think that would be I want to know why.
That is just absolutely terrifying to hear that student's account, that someone went to the door and could have let that student, the alleged shooter, into class, but backed away.
Yeah, we've heard so many stories like that just coming in over the last couple of hours. Students who heard the gunfire, students who were almost perhaps in the line of gunfire. One guy said he almost went to the bathroom, but kind of just for some reason waited a bit and could have been one of those people. So just heartbreaking and harrowing just to hear some of that.
Yeah, we want to get you now to our 11Alive investigative reporter, Zach Merchant. He has been at the hospital, the Northeast Georgia Medical Health System Medical Center in Barrow County. Zach, what can you tell us about some of the victims that we know have been transported to various hospitals throughout North Georgia?
Well, last word, 3 of the 9 people who were injured are being treated inside the Northeast Georgia Health System. 2 of those patients, they're being treated right here at the Northeast Georgia Medical Center in Winder. A 3rd patient within the system is being treated at the Gainesville location. That is a level 1 trauma center. Importantly, a spokesperson for the health system says that all 3 of those victims, they are gunshot wound victims, but they suffered non-life-threatening injuries. He didn't have any more information than that, couldn't release their names, their identities, their ages, whether they were students or adults. But again, really important to emphasize, saying that those 3 patients within the Northeast Georgia Health System suffered non-life-threatening injuries. And 2 young men we met today will be very, very happy to hear that news. They work right across the street from the Northeast Georgia Medical Center campus here in Winder. Their names are Christian Kinna and Ashton Hopkins. They watched this morning as first responders rushed to Apalachee High School. Kinna and Hopkins, they are recent high school graduates themselves. They just graduated from Apalachee's rival school, Winder Barrow High School, last spring. And in this small, tight-knit community, they say they know a lot of people in the Apalachee community too.
It hurts to see people who are possibly down the same path as I am coming to a fate quicker and not getting the opportunity to shine, as if a shooting star just got shot down. Like, it's really just sad to me, because I know for a fact that they could be someone great, and we would have never known.
You just heard from Christian Kinna. He's 18 years old. As we said, he's a recent Winder-Barrow High School graduate. He has a younger sister who is still a high school student at Winder-Barrow. Christian says she was on lockdown today. Authorities tell us that lockdown was precautionary. There was never an active threat there, but you can just imagine the terror that she felt, and even more so, the terror that so many young people and teachers and other adults inside Apalachee High School experienced today. A spokesperson for the Northeast Georgia Health System says that in addition to the 3 gunshot wound victims they're treating across the health system here, he says 5 people have checked themselves into the hospital experiencing what he described as anxiety or panic attack symptoms related to today's shooting. We're live in Winder. Zach Merchant, 11Alive News.
All right, Zach, thank you so much. We also know tonight that at least one person was life-flighted to Grady Memorial Hospital in Atlanta as a result of this shooting. So we're continuing to work that part of this investigation for you tonight as well.
Right now, we want to bring in 11Alive's Caitlin Ross because we know that 2 students and 2 teachers among those who were killed today, just horrible. And I know you've been talking with some loved ones and friends of those who lost their lives.
It is beyond tragic, and we are learning more about those people right now. We're waiting to identify them until we hear directly from police. We want to make sure that those friends and loved ones and family members all have a chance to hear that news. But what we know about these people who were killed is they were all remarkable. We're hearing stories of heroism, the 2 teachers who were killed, protecting students, the kids, those students who were killed. We're hearing they were in the same class as the shooter, that they knew him, that they were in class with him. And when you were listening to the witness describe what happened as that shooter came to her door, went right next door, those were classmates of his. And so we're hearing now from family members who had children in those classes that the parents of the students who were killed were frantic looking for them in the hours before they were notified by police. One boy who was in class was a special needs student, had autism. His family was outside for hours making pleas on social media, begging anyone who had seen him to come forward. They were notified around 3:15 in the afternoon, and this family friend told me they were absolutely devastated. She says there is a feeling of heaviness in the entire city, that you go out and you walk around and everyone is in mourning, and they will continue to be in mourning as these stories come out, as we hear more about these victims. I think there's a lot more to learn about what happened inside that school today.
And the unfortunate piece of this is that people are still learning more about who maybe lost their lives. They're seeing these names on social media. Again, we are waiting for official confirmation, but people in that community can't help but start to hear, and that grieving process is about to begin for so many. As we again understand, it's 2 students and 2 teachers. These are people that these students and staff members were seeing every day in class for many years.
Right, and you raised such an important point there, that this is such a small community, and that plays so heavily into people's reactions here. It's because they all know each other. They know and support each other, and if they didn't know the person directly, they have a family member or a friend who did. And so as you're hearing all of these names, there really is this sense of devastation, that it's 4 people that they all knew so well and grew up with that are now lost.
I think the sheriff kind of underscored that when he talked about during his news conference. He said, I was born and raised in this community. I have kids in this school district. I went to these high schools. So I think whether you're, someone in law enforcement, a 911 dispatcher, a nurse, everyone can find some way to be impacted and feel the grief with this.
Right, exactly. That was the trauma doctor I was speaking to earlier said, it's hard enough to do your job when there's a tragedy, but then in these towns, in these communities, these are people who who are coming into your hospital with gunshot wounds. And so it's, they train for this. I saw a really interesting post from the Barrow County Sheriff's Office from years ago about how they train these active shooter drills constantly. And they do it in Barrow County, they do it with force. So they're confronted by people who are waiting in these classrooms, and they know how to respond. The 2 SROs who did respond likely saved countless lives today. But thinking of that mechanism of response when you're in that moment of panic and it's people that it's almost unthinkable. So I'm so glad you said that, Jonathan, that this is so difficult for those first responders who are on these scenes and having to do everything they can to save lives.
And when you think about it, it's anyone who's lost a loved one knows how difficult it is to deal with that loss. But imagine doing it at this age as well. Right. Grief is already difficult enough to process, but to deal with it in such a violent manner in this way is truly devastating. Caitlin, thank you so much.
All right, now we want to get over to 11Alive's Grace King, because this really has gripped so many of us, not just in the Barrow community, not just here in Metro Atlanta, but also it's prompted a national conversation as well.
All right, so let's get you now to Grace King joining us from the newsroom. Grace, we are hearing from so many people who have comments to say about this tonight.
Right. We're hearing from local leaders, national organizations calling for an end to the violence that claimed 4 lives today. The Children's Defense Fund says our desire for easy access to guns has overwhelmed the need for physical protection and social emotional wellness for young people. It says it dreams and fights for a day when children will play freely in parks, walk safely to bus stops, and learn in schools as sanctuaries. Georgia House Speaker John Burns says the state's heart breaks today. He wrote they have prioritized making significant investments in mental health and school safety funding. And while there will be a time and a place for policy discussions, his sole focus right now remains on surrounding these students, teachers, and families with their love and support. And finally, Congresswoman Nikema Williams said heartbreak is not enough. Georgians need immediate, urgent action to improve gun safety because we all need to live in communities free from gun violence. Now, of course, we're continuing to follow the reaction to this tragedy. You can find even more responses, including from local school districts, right now on 11alive.com.
All right, Grace, thank you so much. As we are still hearing from so many people, including the governor, our state senators. We've also heard from the White House presidential candidates. So many people weighing in on a tragedy that's touching so many.
It's touched so many people, like we said, not just in that small community, not just North Georgia, but really throughout our country. We heard from Vice President Kamala Harris speaking during one of her rallies in New Hampshire today. Everyone just expressing sadness and really wanting to do something, and let's hope that something maybe can be done. Like he said, maybe some of the policy discussions can happen later, but still really thinking about the people right now, tonight, affected.
Yeah, and speaking of the people, the Barrow County community certainly wanting to open their arms and wrap them around everybody who has been impacted by this today. Let's get you now out to Angelina Salcido. She is live from a vigil that is taking place today to offer that support. Angelina?
Well, Jennifer, this is where people are coming together in order to try and support one another after a tragedy that happened earlier today. And I'll tell you, it is a pretty somber mood out here, of course, but one of just support and a whole bunch of love for this community. Jug Tavern Park is actually about 15 minutes away from the high school where this shooting happened. I'm going to step out of the way so that you can take a look at just everybody coming together. Some people are bringing balloons, other people are bringing candles, and there are people from all walks of life here, all different kinds of communities here. Some of them were students. Others had students, our parents that had students in the school at the time of the shooting and that are still trying to process the fact that this has happened in this community. Winder, Georgia, of course, is small, and the school community is even smaller. So this is a pretty tough time for everybody who is out here. But the one thing that they tell me they knew they had to do was come out here to show their support for everybody that has been affected here. And the one thing that they continue to say is, you never think that it's going to happen, or if it does happen, it's going to happen close to home. This time, it was actually home, and I think that that is extremely tough for a lot of people to process. I just spoke to one woman, and she was telling me that her son was in the school at the time of this shooting. Her son is a freshman currently, and her son actually knew one of the people who was shot and killed today. They have not even had time to process the fact that this has happened to them, and she has been overwhelmed with emotion, but really just trying to be that strong force for her son to try and get him through the day. She said they knew that they had to come here. They knew that they had to come here to try and process everything with everybody else at the same time as everybody else and give that support that they know that they need to everybody else as well. So we're going to be here throughout the night, talking to different people. As we look around, there's a lot of people that have been crying, a lot of people giving each other hugs, a lot of people shedding tears with one another, bringing signs of love and support for others, flowers, balloons, all different kinds of things. So we look forward to sharing their story and sharing all the love that has been brought to this park tonight to remember everybody who was affected today.
Angelina, you mentioned folks bringing different items like the balloons and flowers. Do we know, is there any type of formal program, or is this really just an event for people to come out and share their grief and share their support and love with one another?
right now, the city talked about this a little bit earlier today, put it out on social media, as well as the police department as well. They really just wanted to give people a space so that they could come, try to process the news, come together, reunify with one another, and try to talk through everything and process everything that has happened today. With that being said, we have seen like a speaker system being brought out here. We have seen a few different things that have been brought out. So we're not quite sure how the program is going to go moving forward, but we have seen people being given candles. So as that program develops, we'll of course share that with you guys as well.
All right, our Angelina Salcido live for us. We know you'll be joining us again during our 11 o'clock hour for the latest as well. Thank you so much. And one of the things she talked about was processing. It's really sometimes hard to process what you don't know.
Yeah.
And there's a lot that we still just don't know behind what happened today. We don't know, again, the conditions of some of the people that are still in the hospital. So our hearts really go out to those people in Winder who are trying to cope and comfort one another still with so many questions out there.
All right. Well, there are so many questions, but there is some information that we have learned tonight from the Georgia Bureau of Investigation. We know 4 people have been killed. 2 students, 2 teachers, 9 people hospitalized at various facilities across North Georgia. We do know from the GBI that there is a 14-year-old suspect who is in custody, who is expected to be tried for murder as an adult. And we understand his name is Colt Gray. We know that this suspect surrendered immediately after being confronted by school resource officers. That information, again, coming from the GBI. So again, this is a developing story. The investigation is underway. Jonathan, earlier today, we were hearing from so many families who were looking to be reunited with their students, saying that the students were being interviewed by the GBI and other law enforcement officials as part of this investigation. So this is just the very beginning of this process for them.
Because many of those students, as we've been saying all afternoon and evening, saw the gunfire, they heard the gunfire, saw the gunman in the hallway. So for a lot of them, their testimony, their account of what happened will be key to this investigation. And we do know, again, that we expect another update sometime tonight from the GBI. We were told it could come within the 7 or 8 o'clock hour. We, of course, will bring that to you on our 11Alive Plus app and have the very latest for you coming up on 11Alive News at 11.
That is where you can stay with us for any developments, any new information that we get on this developing story. You can also visit our website, 11alive.com, and our 11Alive News app. You can scan that QR code right there to download it for free. We'll see you again tonight with the very latest tonight at 11.